ويا قوم لا أسألكم عليه مالا ما أنا إن أجري إلا على الله إنه ملاقو نفسه ولكني أراكم قوما تجهلون ويا قوم من يكفرني من الله إن فرضتم أفلا تذكرون ولا أقول أنزل رجاء إلى الله ولا قريب إني ملك ولا الذين تزدري أعينكم لن يؤتيهم الله خيرا الله أعلم بما في أنفسهم إني إذا لمن الظالمين قالوا قد هذا استمع فأشهرت بنا بلا فإنا بما تعدنا إن كنتم من الصادقين إن كنت من الصادقين قال إنما يأتيكم به الله إن شاء وما أنتم بمعجزين صدق الله العلي العظيم
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد.
Needs gentleness. الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from all of us our efforts in this holy month of Ramadan, fasting, prayers, inshallah, we're doing extra prayers, and most importantly, acts of charity and kindness. It is one of the most important acts in the holy month of Ramadan. Through it, we can free ourselves from the hellfire. وَلَوْ بِشِقِّ تَمْرَةٍ, even if it's with a piece, not a full, but just a piece of date. اتقوا الله ولو بشق تمرة. Feeding in the month of Ramadan, even if it is, if one cannot afford, obviously, but that much, then that is what will, inshallah, guarantee us salvation. It was not said about the dua aspect or salat and the fasting. So they are supposed to make us better people. And the reflection of better people is kindness. If we do purify through siyam and salat, then we become more kind, inshallah. Continuing reflections on the ayat of Surah Hud. Surah Hud, we said, is one of the Makki, or the ayat, the chapters or surahs that were revealed in Mecca, and therefore the common theme of the chapters or the surahs that were revealed in Mecca is in the surah confirmation of revelation, confirmation of the truthfulness of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, obviously Tawheed, the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also very importantly the examples given in these surahs of previous nations and how their people reacted, because the people of Rasul at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, his nation was not responding very well, his own family members. Interestingly, Shaykh al say, one thing reminds us of another. There is a good reflection of one of our contemporary scholars and very renowned in the Arabic world in debates and responding to controversies against the school of Ahlul Bayt. He brings up a very interesting analogy. He says, what happened to all these people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran they will not believe? لتنذر قوما إن لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون. The statement is truth about most of them, they will not believe. The Prophet was told in Surah Yasin in early chapters or early revelations that most of them will not believe. Now all of a sudden after the Fatih of Mecca, all of them became Sahaba. And all of them became, amongst the elite, the best. One became the uncle of the believers, another became the Sayfullah al-Maslul, the sword of God, and so on. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says most of them will not believe. And when they did submit and surrender after Fatih Mecca, they were called the freed ones, Tulaqa. And this is what Zainab salamullah alayha reminded Yazid la'natullah alayh, that you are the son of those people. When she said to him, reminded him that you were amongst those. So back to the surah, most of the people at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam did not believe. Most of them, his people, in Mecca especially. Okay, yes, in Medina, people started coming from different tribes and different nations even. And even they would come from Yemen, and so on. They heard about him, they would come. His own people did not, his own tribe, Quraysh did not, until it is known after Fatih Mecca. They kept on having animosity and wars against him. And eventually they had the peace treaty, which Quran refers to as the victory, Fatih, because it led to the opening of it's referred to as conquering. He did not come to conquer. He came to do his Hajj. And basically they were not able to stop him as they would in the past. Salawatullah wa salam alayhi. So the Quran gave examples of those nations before who did not believe. They continued to ridicule their prophets, continued to calling them names, continued to defy, and then eventually it led to a point where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed nature to deal with them based on their rebelliousness. So nature repelled them. Nature basically excluded them eventually. So some of them the volcanoes, others were the wind. The people of Nuh were the water, and the water from both the heavens and from up above and from under. It was some of it was raining on them, and some of it was coming from the underground waters to the فَالْتَقَى الْمَاء, water met each other in on a matter that God had decreed. على أمر قد قدر. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed that, and eventually He says, oh, يا سماء أقلعي, and so on. So these examples are there so that those who are denying are more encouraged to consider, think. Some of them may change. The goal is to guide people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to guide people. But who gets guidance? هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. Muttaqeen, we said, taqwa has been translated into so many meanings. The literal meaning is guard, okay, to protect yourself, to guard. But obviously it's not to protect yourself against God in the sense that God is striking you and you have to protect yourself. No. What is really happening is that we expose ourselves to the consequences of our actions that are set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the formative level of creation. When He created the universe, He made certain actions have certain reactions, consequences. And if we expose ourselves to the consequences of evil acts, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, it's going to be evil. Continuous rebelliousness and disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would lead to even nature rebelling against us, and therefore disasters. Either a disease, sickness from within, or something from an external thing occurring. Nevertheless, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving these examples. Why? So that those who are defying, denying, continuously ridiculing the Prophet, calling him names, they are reminded that, wait, there were people before us. What happened to them when they denied? So think about it. Again, we have to look at the Quran as an ongoing message. Those ayat were not over. It's not, okay, now it's Mecca's time is over, so those ayat are over. No. Those ayat still apply today to anyone who is still in that position. And it doesn't have to be people who are labeled as non-believer or non-Muslim. It's not about the labels. It could be Muslims by name, Muslims by birth, believers by birth or name, who are not acting in accordance to faith, or their faith does not reflect in their actions. If I am born Muslim by name, yet I am constantly acting in ways that shows that I am defiant towards the Quran. This is the month of Quran, yes? I am defiant. Quran says something and I want to do something else. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides me in a direction and I am trying to go in the opposite direction. Therefore, I am in the same position as the people of Nuh alayhi salam. I'm not no different. We seek refuge to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from being in that position. That we deserve, or we allow, or God permits our surroundings, ourselves and our surroundings, to rebel against us. And we face the consequences of our actions. It is a message for all of us in every ayah, and that's how we need to analyze and read the Quran. Not think, okay, these people, they were bad, okay, they were punished. We read Surah Al-Fajr and multiple nations were mentioned. Here, a little more elaboration. So some of the surahs, in very brief, quickly, you know, ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بعاد إرم ذات العماد وثمود الذين جابوا الصخر بالواد وفرعون ذي الأوتاد. That's it. 3 nations already mentioned and what happened to them. Not the full details. Don't you see what happened to them? Okay. And most of us, we go through it like there's nothing. No, hold on. Alam tara. God is saying, look, what happened to them? So if I am living a lifestyle like these people, I should expect that to happen to me. Or I should seek refuge to God from the consequences of my action, therefore seek repentance, forgiveness. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive me and purify. When we read about the people of Nuh, one of the common things, let's look at one thing that they did. And we read in these ayat, that very clearly. They belittled the believers because they were of the less classy people. Less financially less fortunate, okay? Lower class of the society. That's something that we need to reflect. Where are we? Do we assess people and therefore respect or disrespect people based on their financial status or social status in our community, their connections and so on? Because that's what these people did. And that's what led, and a lot of these things stem from certain diseases in the heart, not the physical heart, yeah? This disease is al-kibr, arrogance. Arrogance is a big disease. It has so many, it has so many symptoms. Okay, it shows itself in so many areas. One of them is belittling people, and making justification of that. Maybe we belittle, and this is something that we need to be careful about. Sometimes people who are more practicing of their religion look down upon those who practice less. I want you to think about that. We think we're better than them. They don't practice as well as we do. Therefore, they're of a different class. So we make another classification now. The more practicing, the less practicing, and so on. Those who perhaps are more familiar with, Quran and Dua, recite better, and so on, versus those who don't. If we belittle them because of that, if we think we are better than them, we have the disease of arrogance. Imam Rada alayhi salam, in a very beautiful hadith, he says, the intellect of a person is not complete until or unless they possess 10 qualities. He states all 10. Coming to the 10th, he says, as for the 10th, and how would you know what the 10th is? In other words, he is emphasizing this is very, very important. He says, this person whose intellect is complete, whoever they look at, they say he is better than me. Whoever. Huwa khayrun minni. I want you to remember these 3 words. Very simple, very, very powerful in the journey of tazkiyah, purification. Whoever you meet, say to yourself, Huwa khayrun minni. He is better than me. Huwa khayrun minni. Or here, okay, it applies to women as well. The default in Arabic, whenever it's a mix, is the masculine pronouns. It doesn't mean that it's excluding the feminine. So if it's plural of men and women, you would use the men plural, masculine plural. It's a linguistic thing, has nothing to do with anything else, discrimination or whatever. No, it's just a language. Okay. And so the default here is huwa khayrun minni. It applies to hiya khayrun minni too. Don't exclude that. Maybe that's more difficult. I don't know. Nevertheless, whoever you see, no matter who it is, and this is the Imam is saying, this is a quality that someone whose intellect is complete. And remember, aql is the one that leads to Jannah. Al-aqlu ma ubida bihi ar-Rahman wa iktusiba bihi al-jinan. Aql is the one through which the merciful Lord is worshipped and paradise or the gardens are achieved. One achieves gardens through aql. So aql is what leads us to God. Aql is not complete. It is not complete unless we possess all of the qualities, 10 qualities. The 10th the Imam emphasizes on is that whoever they look at, maybe it's most important or maybe it's most difficult. Why the Imam emphasized, we don't know. It might be both. It's most important and most difficult. Whoever they look at, they say he or she is better than me. Huwa khayrun minni. Make this, in Farsi we say like your earring. Earrings, yeah. Is that what they call them? Earrings, yeah. Halqi gush. So basically, always rings in your ear. Ringing in your ear always. Huwa khayrun minni. Huwa khayrun minni. Make sure you always remember this. And that will humble us. Because otherwise, look at what these people did. We were up to ayah, I believe 29, correct? قال يا قوم أرأيتم إن كنت على بينة. No, that's 28. ويا قوم لا أسألكم عليه مالا. I don't know if you reflected on this ayah. I'm not asking you for any money for what I'm doing. And that is one of the proofs of the truthfulness of prophethood or prophets. They were not asking for rewards. Okay? And that is a proof. اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون. They're guided, they're living a guided lifestyle, and they're not asking for a reward. And so that is one of his proofs to the people. He says, وَيَا قَوْمِ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ مَالًا. I'm not asking you for any money for what I am doing. I'm inviting you to God not to pay me. Other temples, you go there, you have to pay them. I'm not asking you to pay me. Now, some people may ask, why is it that Islam then prescribes khums and zakat? You know, if that's the case, why are we then having to pay khums and zakat? First of all, khums and zakat happen when a system is established, a government is established. So there's a tax. And also, the Prophet now has to dedicate his time and the times of certain people whom he's preparing as the core, the teachers, and he has to pay them. Where does he pay them from? Okay, so that's as part of the system when it was established. But when he was inviting people, he never asked them. You come, you accept. Nevertheless, now we have a government, we have a system, we have schools, we have students, we have preachers who we have to send to other parts of the world to do what the Prophet did. And for them to do what the Prophet did, they have to live independent of people. If they go and ask people for money, they're not going to be easily accepted by people, by their audience. So they have to be financially independent. And this is the significance of khums, by the way. Many people don't understand this. The khums, the way the Imams of Ahlul Bayt used it mostly to support their network of students. And this is how it continues today. And so it allows those who are inviting people towards God not to ask an individual, imagine somebody calls me, they need an advice, they need help. Okay, they have a question, religious question. And I tell them, they'll need the money first, and then I can give you the answer. Okay? Or there's a family issue, problem between husband and wife. Okay, and they contact me, or I become aware of it, and I want to guide them, help them, try and reconcile between them. And I say, okay, first, the payment first, and that's not how it works. So this is where a system had to be established. That's besides our conversation, but a side note which I think is important to understand. So he did not, yeah.
So this verse also, I think people can sometimes misconstrue because of the prophet or the scholars, they don't ask for a reward, but they also need to live.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't be taken advantage of just because they're kind-hearted and they want to help.
Yeah. So there is, for instance, a command in the Holy Quran. That's a very good point. There's a command that when you come to speak to the Prophet, give a sadaqah. أن تقدموا بين يدي نجواكم صدقة. Charity. Now, people ask, why? Okay, they come to speak to the Prophet, don't take advantage of him. Okay? And those who are capable financially, pay. The Prophet, what does he use it for? Does he want to live a lavish lifestyle? He never lived a lavish lifestyle. Okay, so he uses it to promote goodness, which the message of God. And so it's perfectly fine, and it's beautiful. Okay? And those who are capable. And the ayat are very clear. Those who can. You cannot understand it. But if you have the means, you should. And so similarly, people should honor their scholars. And I'm not suggesting, I'm only a student, but they should honor, they should think of, as you mentioned, their livelihood. If they want to dedicate their lives towards serving people, and therefore they would not have the time to go and seek their sustenance through other means, then they should be supported. They should be, and people have to understand that there's an obligation. And trust me, if people fulfill their obligation of just the khums, we'd be in a much better place. Even some do, alhamdulillah, but many unfortunately don't. I was asked once in a community in another city, not here, why doesn't the Maghreb help us? They get so much khums. Why don't they help us, our community, our center? So I asked them, said, out of this city, forget about Abu, out of this city, how many people actually pay khums? I didn't ask them if you pay. Okay, how many people actually pay and how much? I don't know. It must be a lot. I said, well, I can tell you. We handle that. And in the last year that I've been with you guys, we collected, if I'm not mistaken, it was $4,000. Out of a community that was probably 400 families. Okay? And it was. Some communities are better than other communities. Some are more practicing in that regard, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them. SubhanAllah, they're more affluent as well. That's how it works. You give, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala multiplies. Nevertheless, it should be done voluntarily. They should not have to ask. They should not have to put themselves in that position. Nevertheless, the proof of prophethood is that they are not asking. Okay. Now there's a system later on established for the establishment, for the government, for the schools and so on. That's different. But they're not, when they come to guide people, they're not expecting anything for themselves. And the Prophet was himself well off. and he spent his wealth, and his wife spent all of her wealth, and she was extremely wealthy for the advancement of the mission of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. لا أسألكم عليه مالا. So now the example of Nabiullah Nuh ala nabiyina wa alayhi salam is given in the same regard. There is a riwayah, however, interesting. Imam Rida alayhi salam, he was asked about the rights of Ahlul Bayt, because they often speak about the rights of Ahlul Bayt. He was asked about the rights of Ahlul Bayt and how are they, you guys suggest that you are chosen. إن الله اصطفى آدم ونوحا وآل إبراهيم وآل عمران. The Imams of Ahlul Bayt used to say that we are an application of that ayah, us, that God chose us. So how do you have a Quranic proof that you are chosen? So the Imam recited this ayah and recited another ayah about the Prophet having قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى. So he says, God never said in the words of any of his prophets that I'm asking you for love of my family. They say, we ask you of no reward. The Prophet said, I ask you of no reward except that you love my family. This is God choosing us. Inna Allah astafa. This is a proof from the Quran that we are chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even above the families and the Ahlul Bayt of all other prophets, previous prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he says, I don't ask you of any reward or any money. وَيَا قَوْمِ لَا أَسْأَلْكُمْ عَلَيْهِ مَالًا. In ajriya, my reward, surely, إِلَّا عَلَى اللَّهِ. It is upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَا أَنَا بِطَارِدِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Why? Because they said, we only see the lowest level of the people following you. If you repel them from around you, we'll consider accepting you. If your circle is going to be these poor people, we won't sit with you, we won't accept you. But if you change, then we'll consider. He says, وَمَا أَنَا بِطَارِدِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. I would never repel or reject or shoo away. Tard is to basically not welcome, the opposite of welcoming. So when you ask someone to go away, okay, he said, I would not do that. I'm trying to see what they use for translations for that one.
Drive away.
Yeah. So when you tell someone to go away,
or dismiss.
Dismiss, yeah, could be dismiss. Dismissal, as in like when you dismiss as employees. That's that kind of dismissal is start. Like you don't have a place here anymore. Okay, go. So, وَمَا أَنَا بِطَارِدِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. I would never do that. إِنَّهُمْ مُلَاقُو رَبِّهِمْ. This is amazing. It says they will meet. They surely are going to meet their Lord. رَبِّهِمْ. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very kind to the believers. And so they will meet their very kind Lord, who's the Lord of all. But now He is especially theirs in the sense that they are favored, and those who repelled them, rejected them, are repelled. Therefore, if I drive them away, if I shoo them away, if I tell them to go away from around me, I would be having to face Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They will meet their Lord. إِنَّهُمْ مُلَاقُو رَبِّهِمْ وَلَكِنِّي أَرَاكُمْ قَوْمًا تَجْهَلُونَ. What I see for sure is that you are ignorant people. What is ignorance here, or in what context is ignorance used? Perhaps it is their assessment of people. Arakum, I see that you guys are ignorant. Ignorant of what? Could be ignorant of liqa Allah, the meeting of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but also could be ignorance in their assessment of people. Because you're assessing these people based on their wealth, maybe education, whatever it may be, level, what family they come from, lineage, their social status, therefore, or anything that is, the basis upon which you're classifying them, worldly things. When your classification should be based on their proximity, nearness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That should be the basis of the classification. It should not be, oh, okay, they're close, or they're rich, they're poor, they're from this family, they're from that family, they're from this country, they're from that country. This city, that city. We make classifications even within communities. Okay, they came from this city, they came from that city. Same race, same language, same maybe even looks, everything, but okay, they came from different cities. And so they accepted, we're not going to accept. This is their way of life, accepting certain rituals. We won't do them because this is beneath. People even in terms of academic education versus religious education, they make classes of that. Okay, these people studied traditionally in the religious establishment, and these people studied in universities and a different establishment. And so they decide whether they want to have certain practices based on the fact that, okay, our type people will not do these things. Okay, so I'll give you an example. A beard is typically, in some cultures, those who studied traditionally in Islam, you have people who are speakers and they try and speak about Islam, Quran, Ahlul Bayt, and whatever, and clean shaven. Why? Because they studied at university. Okay. Because that practice belongs to those people, not to us. Sometimes we fall into these traps. Okay. We start practicing or not practicing based on those classifications. And that's one thing we should definitely avoid. Therefore, he says, I would not drive them away. Why? Because they will meet their Lord. And I see that you are ignorant. In your classification, you are ignorant. You don't see their proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're better that they have submitted. وَيَا قَوْمِ, he continues on the same wavelength. وَيَا قَوْمِ مَنْ يَنْصُرُنِي مِنَ اللَّهِ إِنْ تَرَكْتُهُمْ أَفَلَا تَذَكَّرُونَ. He says, my people, again, this is repeated, my people, my people. So the goal is what? The goal is to connect with them so that he can guide them. We said connection before correction. You want to help people improve, you have to make that connection first. If you don't have that connection, you don't go abruptly to someone and try and do amr bil ma'ruf and nahy anil munkar in a way that becomes more repelling. And if they were considering, they would not want to anymore with your approach or with anyone's approach. So the approach should always be gentle. بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة, beautiful words of advice when you want to invite people, وَجَادِلْهُمْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. Husn is not just goodness, it's beauty as well. You know, with the most beautiful responses you have to give them. So choose your words and make sure you are using the most beautiful words. Dear, my people, my dear people, my dear friends, my brother, my sister. Can we say brother and sister to people of other schools of practice or thought, religions? What do you think? Having a debate? Yeah, of course. They are. Okay. There is the human brotherhood above all. Okay. And Imam Ali alayhi salam alluded to it in the Nadir. And he did not negate it when he said akhul laka fi din. No, he said, you know, that part specifically in your religion, he's your brother. He or she is of that caliber. Specifically. It doesn't mean that the other one is not, does not classify as also a brother, a dear one. And let's look at some of the prophets and what Quran refers to them. Akha Ad. Hud is Akha Ad. Who's Ad? His people. He's their brother. Okay, so we have to understand that that the concept of brotherhood is broader. Insaniyah, humanity. Look at all of them as your own brothers, your own children. You know, the younger ones, your own children. Older ones, our ancestors or our respected elders. You know, so that concept should always be maintained. وَيَا قَوْمِ يَا قَوْمِ. How many times? I haven't counted, but you'll find that multiple times Quran mentions that he says to his people, وَيَا قَوْمِ. قَالَ يَا قَوْمِ. And then وَيَا قَوْمِ. And then وَيَا قَوْمِ. So he continues to call them my people, my people. You know, that to, you know, feel that closeness or give them that feeling that I'm speaking to you out of care, out of love. You belong to me. We belong to each other. So he says once again, he reminds them of the fact that he cannot drive away and reject the believers. وَيَا قَوْمِ مَنْ يَنْصُرُنِي مِنَ اللَّهِ إِنْ تَرَكْتُهُمْ إِنَّهُمْ مُلَاقُو رَبِّهِمْ. In the first ayah it says, they are meeting their Lord. Who's going to help me against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Here, it's not, he didn't use Rabbi. مَنْ يَنْصُرُنِي مِنَ اللَّهِ. Perhaps here is referring to the formative level of creation and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created this universe in a way and made this system in a way that certain behaviors will have certain consequences. And so he's referring to that. When he speaks of Rabbi, he would be considering the mercy, intervention from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with his mercy, with his forgiveness, with his covering. The natural thing is that whatever we do is exposed. يَوْمَ تُبْلَى السَّرَائِرُ. On the day of judgment, every secret will be exposed. That's the natural thing. What about he is Sattar al-Uyub? Is he not? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Sattar al-Uyub, Ghaffar al-Dhunub, yes? So the intervention is he hides. He makes the ground forget, he makes the time forget, he makes the angels wipe out, he makes our limbs forget that action. Everything. That's how forgiving and merciful and concealing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. When he conceals, he hides the errors, nothing remembers. So the natural thing is that we face the consequences. But through his mercy, he changes that. When the Prophet speak of Rabbi, there's a relationship. So here there is that mercy, that intervention. But when he says, مَن يَنْصُرُنِي مِنَ اللَّهِ, we're not suggesting two gods, no. It is what we're exposing ourselves to. If I expose myself to some level of mercy, accepting of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then beautiful, he would speak more intimately, Rabbi. وَسِعَ رَبِّي كُلَّ شَيْءٍ عِلْمًا, for example, he says, my Lord. Whereas here he says, مَن يَنْصُرُنِي مِنَ اللَّهِ. Regarding those people, he says, إِنَّهُمْ مُلَاقُو رَبِّهِمْ. They're meeting their Lord. That relationship is established. But regarding someone who is defying God, he says, مَن يَنْصُرُنِي مِنَ اللَّهِ وَيَا قَوْمِ مَن يَنْصُرُنِي مِنَ اللَّهِ إِن طَرَدتُّهُمْ أَفَلَا تَذَكَّرُونَ. Would you not be reminded? تَذَكَّرُونَ here is because it is something they already know. Whenever the prophets teach us something new, it is, the ta'lim. So they ask for tafakkur. أَفَلَا تَفَكَّرُونَ. Think about it. Understand it. أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. But sometimes they say أَفَلَا تَذَكَّرُونَ. Do you not remember? That is something they already know. So what do they know here? مَن يَنْصُرُنِي مِنَ اللَّهِ إِن طَرَدتُّهُمْ. Okay. Perhaps because he already told them of this, taught them about this, that there are consequences, or because deep down within ourselves we know that we are going to face a day of judgment, and within ourselves we know if we do the wrong thing, we're going to face the consequences. In Farsi they say, mountains don't meet. Okay, but Adam be Adam, mirrors. Humans will meet again. Okay, then eventually we'll meet. Not here, in the hereafter. If one gets away with something here, you disrespect somebody, mistreat somebody, you do something evil towards someone. Inshallah, none of us. Somebody. Okay. We think it's over. I got away with it. It's over. Might even pass the whole lifetime. We will meet them. In fact, if we meet here, it's in our favor. It's much easier, much better. You don't want it over there. Here it's much easier. So he says, وَيَا قَوْمِ مَن يَنْصُرُنِي مِنَ اللَّهِ إِن طَرَدتُّهُمْ أَفَلَا تَذَكَّرُونَ. Do you not remember? وَلَا أَقُولُ لَكُمْ عِنْدِي خَزَائِنُ اللَّهِ وَلَا أَعْلَمُ الْغَيْبَ وَلَا أَقُولُ إِنِّي مَلَكٌ. Some of the things that people would often ask their prophets to do or accuse them of not being truthful because they don't have those things, he shares here. One is, I don't have all the treasures. They said to the Prophet of Islam, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they said, you should make this mountain into gold, the mountain near them. Everybody will be wealthy. You're a prophet of God, you speak to God, God speaks to you, you're telling us God has revealed to you. Tell him to make this mountain into gold. He says, similar to Nabiullah Nuh, and so he's reminding them of our prophet is reminding them of the nation of Nuh and how they made the same accusations, the same arguments. He says, I don't have the treasures. وَلَا أَقُولُ لَكُمْ. I don't say to you, عِنْدِي خَزَائِنُ اللَّهِ. I have the treasures of God. If God wants to give me, he gives me. If he doesn't want to give me, he doesn't. And my purpose is not to come and make you wealthy. My purpose is to guide you. In fact, wealth might ruin you. And that's what often happens. إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَيَطْغَى أَنْ رَآهُ اسْتَغْنَى. When insan feels needless, often insan transgresses. When does he remember? When he has some need, either financial or sometimes health. Rich, everything is there, and suddenly he's told, you have this disease. All of a sudden, do we have any dua? They start looking through the books, Quran, dua, mafatih, multiple, and they would be willing to use any, dua, any advice, and they would sit and do it. And when it passes, what happens? They feel needless again. So it's not necessarily in their favor that he makes them wealthy. Okay. Turn the mountain into gold. And then what? You become needless, and you become more of a, or some may become more of a transgressor and oppressor. ولا أقول لكم عندي خزائن الله ولا أعلم الغيب. I don't know the unseen. The prophets, do they or do they not? He says, ولا أعلم الغيب. Our prophet says, لو كنت أعلم الغيب. If I knew the unseen, I would increase in what would benefit me, and nothing that would harm me would ever happen to me. So do they or do they not? How do we resolve this?
When Allah means
Sometimes they know whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants them to know. Yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is revealing to them, ذَلِكَ مِنْ أَنْبَاءِ الْغَيْبِ نُوحِيهِ إِلَيْكَ. For those who say the Prophet of Islam has no knowledge of the unseen, God says, that is ghaib I am teaching you. God is telling his Prophet in the Quran, subhanAllah, they read the Quran and they still maintain he has no knowledge of the unseen. Yet God says, ذَلِكَ مِنْ أَنْبَاءِ الْغَيْبِ نُوحِيهِ إِلَيْكَ. That is the news of the unseen that we are revealing to you. So whenever God reveals to him, he knows. God doesn't want him to know, he doesn't know. Same thing with Ahlul Bayt salawatullah salamu alayhim ajma'in. We cannot confuse things. Some suggest they know absolutely everything. Whatever God wants them to know, they know. If God doesn't want them to know certain things, they don't know. Now, certain things that are necessary for guidance of the people, whatever is necessary for guiding the people, they know. Why? Because that's their purpose. God has already given them that. Their purpose is to guide the people. So whatever is necessary for that, they know. If it's not necessarily something that they know unless God tells them. So for instance, when the Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, I could have told you, but there's an ayah in the Quran about يَمْحُ اللَّهُ مَا يَشَاءُ وَيُثْبِتُ. Okay? Based on how things are on the appearance, on the surface, I can tell you what's going to happen. But God changes things. Could God confirm to them what is going to happen despite all the changes that may occur based on the appearance? He can. And so based on those, when the Prophet ﷺ, he gave the signs of the end of times or the signs of the return of the 12th Imam al-Mahdi Ajalullah Ta'ala Farajahu al-Sharif, when he told the people about those, perhaps those would be part of what God has revealed to them based on what is confirmed, what has been confirmed and has no change. So we have suggestions that there are some signs that are confirmed, and that's another discussion. So we'll come back to the ayah. وَلَا أَعْلَمُ الْغَيْبِ. So if God doesn't teach me, I don't know. That's the simple. So don't ask me to tell you things that I may not know, and then tell me you're not a prophet because you don't know everything. No, I don't know everything. I know what God teaches me. That's what he is saying. وَلَا أَقُولُ إِنِّي مَلَكٌ. I don't say I am an angel. They expect an angel to come and guide the people. And the argument that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught his messenger in the Holy Quran is that, and if angels were living on earth, then an angel would have been sent as a messenger. What does that mean? A messenger has to be from your type, cannot be some other being. Since we are humans, God sent a human. إن كنت إلا بشرا رسولا. I'm a human, but a messenger. So there is a connection that is happening with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm a messenger of God, but I'm a human. So here he says, ولا أقول إني ملك ولا أقول للذين تزدري أعينكم لن يؤتيهم الله خيرا. That is back to the main problem they had, and we started about al-kibr, arrogance. They belittled and looked down upon a certain group of people, and they wanted him to repel them, reject them, drive them away. He says, I would not do that. I cannot face God on the day of judgment with that. Who would, مَن يَنصُرُنِي مِنَ اللَّهِ? Who can help me? If God on the day of judgment allows the consequences of my action to happen, He doesn't help me, who's going to help me then? Can anyone help me? No. مَن يَنصُرُنِي مِنَ اللَّهِ. Nobody can help me if I drive them away. إِن طَرَدتُّهُمْ أَفَلَا تَذَكَّرُونَ. Then, coming back to that, he says, ولا أقول للذين تزدري أعينكم لن يؤتيهم الله خيرا. I would never say to those who you think lowly of that God would not give them goodness. You think little of them, and you want me to, subhanAllah, this is a problem that sometimes we may face in our lives. When we try to appease certain people, especially if they're of a very important social position, class, we might speak their words, their tone of speech to please them. There was a man who was with the Prophet, but to please the mushrikeen of Quraysh, he frowned upon a believer, the blind believer. Unfortunately, there are others who suggest that it was the Prophet who frowned. And our scholars have given extensive answers to that and refuted that accusation. There are, believe it or not, we have some within the school of Ahlul Bayt who make that suggestion. There's a famous speaker, I wouldn't call him a scholar, who does Tafseer, and it was compiled, I don't know if it's translated, but in Farsi it's compiled, and he made that suggestion, and he gave some arguments that, why are we trying to deny? There's nothing wrong with it. And he gave a few points there. So one of the brothers in the Vancouver community, I was there, then he said, it was the Prophet, according to this speaker. And he gave me, he showed me the book that gave like a few points, 5 or 6 arguments. And I did write an article in response to that. And I told him we can send it to him. Maybe he will learn a few things. Not because I said it, because we have a hadith that responded to these things many, many centuries ago. And yet we're still talking about the same things. One of them, he's saying that there was nothing wrong with, no sinful action on behalf of the Prophet if he did. But actually it's wrong. Because Quran commanded the Prophet in previous ayat that you have to be gentle and humble yourself with the believers and turn away from the disbelievers. A command that came before Surah Abasa. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him to go on with the mission and start the mission from the family to the broader mission. فاصدح بما تؤمر وأعرض عن المشركين. Turn away from the mushrikeen. إنا كفيناك المستهزئين. And then he says, واخفض جناحك. Humble yourself. خفض الجناح is extreme humility and humbleness. Humble yourself for those who followed you from the believers. لمن اتبعك من المؤمنين. Yet he turns away from the believer and turns towards the direct disobedience, whoever did it. So there's absolutely no way it could have been the Prophet, and we have other proofs. I had some 15 points there, and we have our Mufassirin, Allama Tabatabai, and the likes have clearly rejected that with all sorts of proofs. Nevertheless, back to here, the ayah, they expected the Prophet to mistreat, to speak ill about those around him. Now you don't want to repel them, at least don't speak highly of them. Okay? And sometimes we get affected by that. And this is what we need to be careful about. If you're sitting with certain people and they are speaking ill of others based on their social class, practices, or whatever, some, they say nothing. Is that okay? Indifference? That's not okay. Some, they actually speak with. They say a few words with. Because that's, to make the person speaking feel better, you have to agree with them. So, and even say a few words, add salt and pepper, as they say, in support of that. That's the worst, obviously. Only a few that would not want to listen to it would say something or leave, not be in such gatherings. So they expected the Prophet to not praise or not speak highly of the believers, and they belittled them. He says, وَلَا أَقُولُ لِلَّذِينَ تَزْدَرِي أَعْيُنُهُمْ لَن يُؤْتِيَهُمُ اللَّهُ خَيْرًا. No, I would never say that God would not give them good rewards, goodness, high positions. Never say that. They may, Abu Dhar became higher than all of the elites in the eyes of the Prophet, and how the Prophet described him in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Abu Dhar was not even from Quraysh. Okay, for them, who is Abu Dhar? Okay, and who are these people around the Prophet, the family and the relatives and Quraysh members? Salman was not even an Arab. For them, Arab versus Ajam, they call them, non-Arab. These people are beneath. Doesn't matter. ولا أقول للذين تزدري أعينكم لن يؤتيهم الله خيرا الله أعلم بما في أنفسهم. God knows what's in their hearts. This is important. Remember the هو خير مني I shared earlier? Imam Rada alayhi salam explained that. Because some of us might think, well, wait a second. If someone is drinking, smoking certain things, someone is not practicing, how can I say he's better than me? Think about it. We said, whoever you meet, whoever, and I mean whoever, you say he is better than me. No mention of names. Presidents, prime ministers, whatever. Whoever. How can I? I'm not saying justify their actions. I'm not saying that we are to praise them for their actions. No. But don't you ever think that you are in a higher position than them. No. Why? You don't know what's in their hearts, and you don't know what their ending will be. خاتمة الأعمال بخواتيمها. What matters is the ending. One does a lot of good. Quran says كالتي نقضت غزلها. She made a whole, the weaving, or what do you call it, knitting, made a whole thing with knitting, took days, not hours, days. I remember I had a relative who was knitting something for her daughter with the fine, I don't know what they call it, maybe crocheting or something, with something very fine. It was taking years. He said by the time she's ready for marriage, this is for her, wedding or part of their, what they call jahiziyah, what they, furnish their house with. By the time she's married, it'll be ready. Imagine when it's about to get ready, you start pulling the whole thread, correcting the whole thing. Okay? Just years of doing it and wrecking the whole thing. This is how sometimes we ruin our good deeds. A bad word. We've done so much good towards somebody and then make them feel indebted. لا تتبعوا صدقاتكم بالمن والأذى. You do good deeds, don't go and make people feel indebted to you. Man is when you go and tell them, I did this for you. As in like you owe me. Because that's gone. لا تبطلوا صدقاتكم بالمن ولا. Don't ruin, don't void your acts of charity, acts of kindness with man, where you make people feel like they owe you, and other harm, say harmful things or do harmful things. It voids it. We did something good, it's gone. Here, the ayah is very clear. I do not say لَن يُؤْتِيَهُمُ اللَّهُ خَيْرًا اللَّهُ أَعْلَمُ بِمَا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. God knows what's in their hearts. They might have a pure heart, and my heart is not as pure as theirs. They might have a good ending. They maintain a good deed, though little, they maintain it till the end. One feeling of gratitude, sincere gratitude from their heart towards God could be better than years of me praying, which is supposed to be grateful to God, and I'm not really grateful. I've gotten so much. I was discussing this. How are we going with time? We have some time. With one of the mu'mineen, who he was a revert. So he thought he doesn't have that lineage, not a sayyid, not from lineage of people who prayed and fasted, and he didn't have the good beginning. So he thought that he could never achieve what some of us can. That was his statement he made to me. At the time, I was living in Vancouver, and there was an area there called Hastings, or East Hastings. Homeless people, a lot of crime, drugs, prostitution, all sorts of things. And I gave him this example. I said, somebody walking across the street in that area and about to be hit by a car, the car just misses them. In their position, they feel grateful towards God. Sincerely, from the bottom of their heart, they feel grateful towards God. Could be better than many years of prayers of people who have so much and are not really genuinely, sincerely grateful. Don't ever judge people on the appearances and undermine them because of their practices. You don't know what happened for them to be in that position in life. Don't judge them. Allahu a'lamu bima fi anfusihim. God knows what's in their heart. They might have a pure heart that eventually that other category that the Imam mentions, the husn al-aqidah, the good ending, you don't know what their ending in verses is a result of this. A good pure heart, good ending, and me with all good deeds and perhaps practices and so on. If I don't purify my heart, and if I don't have a pure heart, God forbid, ruin it all. That with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, questioning. Sometimes a calamity happens. SubhanAllah, we speak of calamities and it is very fresh. Our brother losing a loved daughter. Not easy. God forbid, someone in that position feels somehow doubtful, somehow weak. They ruin so much. Inshallah, nothing, I don't see any signs of that. Rather, I see the opposite, alhamdulillah. And I'm inspired, to be honest, by the strength and the level of not just patience, but pleasure, rida, with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed. Rida biqada'ik. This is again, it's all about the ending. We go through trials, we go through tests. Don't judge people. They might be better than us, have a better ending, and we ruin all what we have done with the test that we made. Inshallah, none of us will seek refuge to God from failure in the tests that He sends our way. They're for us to grow. They're not for us to fail, but we also have the free will. Allahu a'lamu bima fi anfusihim inni idhan lamina adh-dhalimin. He says, if I do that, I will be one of the oppressors. If I do not praise them when they deserve praise, if I do not declare that they are doing good and they deserve good from God, so this is a message also. What is the message here? Give credit when it's due. Yeah. Otherwise, إِنِّي إِذًا لَمِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ. Subhanallah. Yeah. If you deny the people of something that they deserve with your statements of lack of defense. Sometimes you're sitting in a gathering, I'm sitting in a gathering, and someone is mentioned, and people try to make accusations. If I don't defend, إِنِّي إِذًا لَمِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ. I know of something good. If I don't say, I could be. Depends on what the reason is. If the reason is kibr, which is often the case, if I praise them, it's affecting my position. Why do people put others down? It's all about, we said this is the disease of kibr, arrogance, ego. If I praise them, what's gonna happen? It makes me feel down or feel less. Yeah. So I don't praise them. That is wrong. إِنِّي إِذًا لَمِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ. Okay, or defend them, depends on the situation and the circumstances. قالوا يا نوح, we have some time. Any questions? A quick, I guess, stretching of the body and the mind. Yeah.
On this idea again,
Yeah.
you were explaining, or if you see somebody doing a bad deed, you don't acknowledge them for the deed, you're against the deed, but you are not against.
them as an individual, yeah. So it's not a personal thing, okay? And I'm not going to judge him and say I'm better because he's done this deed. I don't know how they got there. I don't know what level of intellect, wisdom, exposure, so many variables that affected their decision to do something. I am unaware of. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. Allahu a'lamu bima fi anfusihim. God knows what's in their heart and in their mind, what's going on, what traumas they've been through. Nowadays, we know of trauma and post-traumatic stress and things that could happen as a result. What they've been through in their lives. I don't know. And I'm going to judge them based on the little that I know and an action that they did that I don't. Oh, I don't drink, so I'm better. No. Drinking is bad, but I'm not necessarily better than them. I'm doing something good, which I'm not drinking, not, you know. I'm reading Quran, they don't read Quran. Okay, that's a good act, but it's not necessarily, doesn't mean I'm better than them. The action is a good action, and not reading Quran is not the best action. Neglect of recitation of Quran, neglect of prayers. Okay, so I'm not undermining good deeds or sins on the other hand to say, okay, they're committing sins, it's okay, or they're not doing good deeds, it's okay, and I'm doing good deeds, it means nothing. No. What we're saying is, it doesn't make me better than them. I don't know all the variables, and I don't know about their hearts, and I don't know about their ending. Anyone, absolutely. ما رأى أحدا إلا وقال هو خير منه. Anyone. We don't know. They believe, and again, believe it's not necessarily through labels. Okay, and exposure has also a lot to do with it. So many people born and die, and they are not in the mental capacity to even research about faith and things. Okay? We're going to judge them that they didn't become Muslim. Some people judge them like that, by the way. They didn't become Muslim. Or very good person, I hope they don't, they end up becoming Muslim. I'm not suggesting that becoming Muslim is not an important thing, and it's not an important part of the journey. But we cannot judge people because they weren't exposed to the right, the truth, and the right way. Okay, sometimes all they know about Islam is negativity. So that's actually negative exposure. Okay? And therefore they believed and did good deeds, okay, and were grateful to God and died. Okay? So anyway. While they're doing what they're doing, their action, we have a big problem with their action. Okay? But not a personal thing. And I mentioned a couple of positions, okay, president and prime minister, whatever. Doesn't matter who it is. Okay. When the khatima happens and they die on a certain thing, then there is tawalli and tabarri. And we have to be clear on this. And during the process, it doesn't mean that I'm going to befriend Taghut because I don't know if they're going to become good or their heart is good. Let's not mix things. Okay? We're not going to become of a certain group like Sufi or others who become dismissive of all the sins of people. We're not going to judge the first, the second, the third. We're not going to judge Muawiyah. We're not going to judge Yazid. We're not going to judge anyone. No, there's tawalli and tabarri. They died in the position of animosity and opposition of the Prophet or Ahlul Bayt. Okay, so there's tabarri. Our duty there is to confirm that what we see, it tells us that they're far from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, la'natullah that's what it means. Okay, I'm not denying the concept of la'n. Okay, Yazid, Muawiyah, Awwal, Thani, Thalith, as we have in the ziyarah. Without mention of the names as they are, we'll leave it. Or anyone else. So there is a concept of tawalli and tabarri. We have to have that. Befriending the friends of God, animosity to the enemy of God. I'm not denying any of that. That's part of how we should be. But no judging and suggesting that I am better than them. Okay? There's a personal thing. There's also a community thing. So on a personal level, I have to humble myself. I'm not better. Because the minute I think I'm better and I start with allowing my ego and my nafs to go down that path, God knows where I will end up. هو خير مني. Let it be ringing in our ears, inshallah. قالوا يا نوح. Any other comments or questions? قالوا يا نوح قد جادلتنا فأكثرت جدالنا فأتنا بما تعدنا إن كنت من الصادقين. When they ran out of arguments, everything that they said, the response was clear, and they were given the response to every argument that they made. What happens then? You know, just you keep telling us God's the consequences, punishment, whatever it is, bring it on. No more arguments. Okay? They know, subhanAllah. Why do people say that? If they knew that God would not give them a chance, nobody would say that. If somebody knew that them swearing as a lie would lead to immediate punishment, nobody would swear with a lie. There's a suggestion in the hadith that when Adam alayhi salam and Hawa alayhi salam, when they disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they disobeyed him not knowing that they're disobeying, and they were deceived. And how were they deceived? In the school of Ahlul Bayt, we believe the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are infallible. So we have to understand them given this principle. There's a principle, infallibility, and now we have to understand the ayat. It becomes very easy actually, but the Imams of Ahlul Bayt make it very easy, much easier. The Imam Rida alayhi salam, in his response to Ma'mun about this issue, he said, when Iblis swore to them that I am telling you the truth, I am advising you for what's best for you, وَقَاسَمَهُمَا, he swore by God. Qasam is to swear, bringing the name of God. He swore by God that he is advising them and telling them what's best for them, and what they're doing is not disobedience, and this is good for them. When he did that, they thought he could not have sworn by God and gotten away with it. So what he's telling is the truth. They did not know that God is going to allow someone who brings his name in vain, swearing with a lie, that he would allow them to breathe after that. He should have seized him and punished him immediately. And since that did not happen, therefore the assumption was they're telling the truth. If any human being knew that they would face the consequences of their actions immediately, our problem is tasweef. procrastination. فقد أفنيت بالتسويف والآمال عمري. I will one day become a righteous. I will make amends, change, seek forgiveness, return to the right path. One day. We may not have the opportunity. The problem with most people is that they know what they're doing is wrong. And deep down, they know of resurrection and life after death. That's part of our fitrah. They know it. Prophets have said it. It makes perfect sense to them because deep down they know death is not the end. And now that death is not the end and there is another life, we're going to face the consequences. They know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can. They've seen most of us have seen God's intervention in our lives. Either in something that we wanted so badly to happen and it didn't happen, or something that it was about to happen and we were praying for an aversion and God did avert it. We've gone through those things in life. Imam Ali alayhi salam, he says, I know God through the breaking of the strong will. I have a strong will with all the plans to do something and it doesn't happen. Everything is planned, everything is prepared, and I have the full will to do it. And something happens and it doesn't happen. I know God is there through that. And we've seen that. So they know that. Yet, قالوا يا نوح قد جادلتنا فأكثرت جدالنا. You keep arguing, you have done it a lot. He responded to your accusations. He's not arguing with you. He's responding to your accusations. Now that you ran out of arguments, you're calling for punishment, which is essentially another argument that they think they can win. Why? Because they know God's merciful and they know God does not cease immediately. Often He let us be. How do they know that? They got away with so many things during their lives. They lied and they got away with it. Harmed somebody and they got away with it. So they know that, knowing that I've done so many wrong things and I got away with it. So deep down we know God is there. Deep down we know this is wrong. But okay, we'll make amends later. If there is, because eventually with multiple, continuing to go down the wrong path leads to one denying the truth. So, وَلَئِن رُدِدتُّ إِلَىٰ رَبِّي, he says, if I have returned to my Lord, then just like here, He favored me, He'll favor me. Over there in Surah Al-Kahf, that man arguing with the believer. Even if there is resurrection and I'm returned to my Lord, just like He, took care of me here, He'll take care of me over there. So I'll make amends, seek forgiveness, everything would be good. Here, they're calling for the punishment or for what He promised them, because He told them, if you continue down this path, there are consequences. They say, فَأْتِ بِمَا تَعِدُنَا فَأْتِنَا بِمَا تَعِدُنَا. Bring us what you promised us, or you're promising us, if you are telling the truth. Another argument suggesting that he's the one who's arguing. Sometimes that's what happens. They argue against him and they suggest that he's arguing, and then yet they have another argument, trying to win. It's all about proving yourself or oneself right. We are right, you're wrong. Let's not get stuck in that cycle. Yeah? Think, reflect. فَأْتِنَا بِمَا تَعِدُنَا. If you are telling the truth, then bring what you are promising. قال إنما يأتيكم. We have a few minutes, let's finish this one. قال إنما يأتيكم به الله إن شاء وما أنتم بمعجزين. He says in response to them that it's not me who would bring that. It's God. It's the system that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has established. So He is I'm not the one. This is important because He keeps telling them, Ya qawmi, Ya qawmi. He's trying to connect with them. He wants to guide them. He cares for them. So when they suggested and tried to, misguide some who may want to be guided, this is their way. Like, okay, you're telling us we will be punished, so you have a problem with us. You're promising us that we will be punished, bring it. You bring it. So he's clarifying here that it's not me. In other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings it as what? As a consequence of your actions. So who's bringing it? You're bringing it in. You're bringing it upon yourself. That's the reality. We think that somebody caused harm to me. Often that's how. No, let's think. If it happened, God allowed it. Why? If we think like this, a lot of our thoughts and our assumptions and accusations and way of dealing with people and how they may treat us or what may happen to us from as a result of their actions, a lot of it would change. Why did God allow it to happen? It happened. God allowed it. Why? If it is for me to grow closer to Him, then I see the beauty in that. Isn't that what Zaynab Salawullah alayha said? ما رأيت إلا جميل. It doesn't mean that what the enemy did is justified. No. But I'm seeing beauty coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He allowed it, therefore it's beautiful. The question was, how did you see what God treated you guys? كيف صنعوا? He is suggesting God allowed it. Everything happens with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes. He says, I saw beauty. These people were supposed to return to their Lord. They returned in the most beautiful position, martyrs, shuhada. They're the closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you guys will be punished for what you have done. So not dismissing that it's their action, that they would face the consequences of their actions, but let's think about why it happened. And if we if it causes us to become oppressive, if something that happens causes us to mistreat others, it's not a good thing for us. We can make it a good thing if we make sure that we don't mistreat people, we don't oppress people as a reaction. وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ عَلَىٰ أَنْ لَا تَعْدِلُوا. You don't like the people, they did something to me, they said something, now I want to retaliate, so I go and do something oppressive. I lost in the equation. But if I don't oppress, if I pay back with beauty, for instance, ادفع بالتي هي أحسن, then I win. Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, he says there is no more powerful way of repaying somebody who harms you, since he disobeys God in your regard, no more powerful payback than obeying God in their regard. So they disobeyed God. They said something rude to me. That's disobedience, yeah? If somebody insults, Quran says, وَلَا تَنَابَذُوا بِالْأَلْقَابِ. Do not call each other names. Do not insult each other. Somebody insulted me. A godly way of responding is what? The Imams say, if he says, I will, if somebody says to you, if you say one thing to me, I will say 10, then tell them, if you say 10 things, I will not say one. Normally when somebody says something, the response is 10 times. Now they said one thing, and you start. Sometimes in the family it happens. I don't want to suggest which gender and how, but one says one, and the other one, I don't know, 10. 10 is not enough. Okay? The Imam says the response should be, if you say 10, I will not say one. This is how we pay back. ادفع بالتي هي أحسن. This is the godly way. Realizing that what happened is an opportunity for me to grow. They did the wrong thing, not suggesting that if somebody insulted me, they did the right thing. No. But it's an opportunity for me to humble myself, grow, do a good deed of forgiving, do another good deed of saying a beautiful thing, paying back with beauty. I have all these opportunities and I'm missing out on all of that because I'm allowing my ego and nafs to take control of me. You say one thing, you hear 10.
Which one will say they spoke badly about that? I said, if whatever you say is true,
Amir al-Mu'mineen happened. Yeah. So we have actually that similar story to multiple of our imams. That somebody insulted Amir al-Mu'mineen sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Imam says, if what you said, and also Imam Baqir alayhi salam, in a very famous incident, this happened. He says, if what you're telling me is true, I seek forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for what you said about, for what I am. And if what you're saying is not true, I seek forgiveness for you, for making this accusation. So regardless, returning to God, that's seeking forgiveness for me and you. This is a beautiful thing, connecting with the people. To realize that we are one, we're a family. To realize that we affect each other so much. If I'm living here in this city and I'm cursing everyone around me, how am I being a source of beauty? But if I'm sitting in this city and seeking forgiveness for all those around, and that's what the Prophet used to do. That's what all the prophets used to do. These people here around us, I seek forgiveness for them. We should do istighfar for them around us. Whatever they do. If we can advise, we advise. Disloyal to parents, for example. Seek forgiveness for them. Bad in their relationship with one another. Whatever they're doing, seek forgiveness. Be a source of rahmah, a source of mercy. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was rahmatan lil alameen. The hadith says that there were two things that withheld the adab, God's punishment, or the consequences that are set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, withhold it from the people. Two things existed during the life of the Prophet. One is him, and one is istighfar. And this is confirmed in the Holy Quran. وَمَا كَانَ اللَّهُ مُعَذِّبَهُمْ وَأَنْتَ فِيهِمْ وَمَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيُعَذِّبَهُمْ وَهُمْ يستغفرون. God will not allow the consequences of their actions and punishment to come except while we're in them, and as long as they are seeking forgiveness. So the hadith says, one of them is gone. The Prophet is not with us. That's a shameful situation that no matter what we do, we can't do anything about. But what we can do is, the hadith says, one of them is removed, the other one is up to us. Istighfar. If you want your family, your community to be in a better position and collectively face mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, seek forgiveness. Not just for you. Fatima al-Zahra, salam alayha, who was she seeking forgiveness for? All around. The same people she said, I tested them and I detest them. It doesn't mean that she would not seek forgiveness. Because these people are sources of mercy. Rahmah. أصبحت قالية لرجالكم. She says in her sermon, that seeking forgiveness. All of them turned their backs from Ahlul Bayt. Yet Ahlul Bayt seeking forgiveness. Allahumma akfir al-mu'minina wal-mu'minat wal-muslimina wal-muslimat. Although some do the tafsir of this Muslimina wal-muslimat as the higher level of Islam, which is higher than Iman. So it's like the taslim. In other words. So we have Iman and then taslim. وَيُسَلِّمُ تَسْلِيمًا. That's a higher level. So some people, when it comes to that Muslimina wal Muslimat, they suggest, that's a suggestion. Nevertheless, the Imams teach us to be broader in our dua, in our seeking forgiveness, in considering the people our family. Imam Ali alayhi salam, when he writes to Malik al-Ashtar, the assignment letter, he doesn't tell him love some. He says to him, love all of them, all the people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows the consequences of their actions. It doesn't mean that the Prophet is bringing it. The Prophet is a source of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has to clarify that. If you want to be a source of goodness, if you want to live a prophetic lifestyle, then we need to be sources of goodness for our surroundings, for our people, the people around. Otherwise, we cannot consider ourselves followers of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. قال إنما يأتيكم به الله إن شاء, if he wills, if he wants. If, when, we don't know. We might think, again, we said, هو خير مني. Coming back to that. We might think this person is on the wrong path. We might think that they might be punished for it. A more godly way would be seek forgiveness for them. Maybe they'll be forgiven and they might be in a better position and higher position than I am. Keep ourselves in check. Don't judge people, judge yourself more. Let's focus on ourselves more. Often we're so good and so quick at judging others. Classifying them, hell, heaven, already, done deal. That's it. Yeah. Lowest level. They harmed me, now it's personal. They're in the lowest level of hell. And that's what I want for them. No, astaghfirullah. That's not what I want for them. We should not want that for them. Rather, we should ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive them. They're our people. They're our people. If we are born and lived in this time, God wanted us to be living amongst these people. They are our people. All of us belong to each other. You owe me something, I owe you something. We owe it to each other. Istighfar, trying to guide, hidayah, دعوة إلى الحق rather than judgment, and that's it. Even if somebody is in the worst position of fighting physically against the believers, do you think Ahlul Bayt, now I want to finish with this one, Ahlul Bayt, if they were fighting that individual, and even as sometimes we refer to it as sent them to hell, okay? If they strike them because they want the worst for them, or they want to help them. What do you think? If they stay any longer, what do they do? More trouble. More trouble puts them in worse position. Amr ibn al-As, this is narrated by historians very clearly, Sunni and Shia, that Muawiyah in Safin, Imam Ali alayhi salam called Muawiyah for a challenge. He said to him, come, me and you, we fight. And let's spare all these lives. You have a problem with me? We fight. If, one of us will kill the other, and we'll spare all the lives of these Muslims. Thousands of lives were lost. So Amr ibn al-As said to Muawiyah, لَقَدْ أَنْصَفَكَ. He was on his side. He said, he's being fair with you. So Muawiyah said to him, I know you're a cunning person. You want it for yourself. That's what it is. They were fighting over the Khilafah. He plotted and planned so that he becomes the Khalifa. So he said, I know you want me dead, and you want to become the Khalifa. Since you said that, you go and fight. And they suggest that initially, he put him in a position that he has to do it. He said, you have to. Whenever in Arabia, whenever they had the war, they would start with duels. One-on-one, sorry. Like two people, one-on-one. So he forced me, said, you go. And he was about to be struck and gone. He would have spared the believers from so much more mischief that he made. Because he was the one who created the Quran plot of putting the Quran on the spears. He was the one who created the tahkim, the judgment, and deceived Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. All of that was him. So a lot was changed as a result of him, but he did not allow that strike. He dropped his clothes naked, so the Imam left him. The Imam would not come. He went down to that. And أحرص الناس على حياته, so eager for this life that even if it means I expose myself in front of everyone in the battlefield just to be. So at that point, the Imam left him. Obviously, the Imam was not. So whatever comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and from Anbiya Allah and from the Imams and Awliya Allah is good. And the prophets, and we should also follow that path, are sources of mercy. So we should be, inshallah, sources of mercy. And whenever something comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no one can block it. وَمَا أَنْتُمْ بِمُعْجِزِينَ. Nobody can block that. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد.